Hello, everybody. Greetings from Confederation of Medical Association of Asia and Oceania. I'm Dr. K.K. Agarwal. Welcome to this non-stop 43rd Saturday early morning meeting of CMAAO, where we discuss latest about the COVID-19 situation. Today, we will have 3 points on agenda. One of them will be the reports coming from Norway about 23 deaths related to COVID-19 vaccine. The second thing we will discuss will be one of the video which we have made of all the faculty who have participated in various discussions. We would like to show it to them, and then we can give it to them, which they can show it to their own countries. And the third discussion will be on the results of AD26 vaccine from Johnson & Johnson. Because now vaccines are available, we will now start talking about second generation vaccines, what is going to be the future. So the first thing which I want to discuss is the reports from Norway. So I'll show you a couple of slides from Norway, what we are talking about. So this is a report which has come, Norway report deaths related to COVID-19 vaccination. Then when we read about it, it talks about then it talks about 23 people die. And they all 23 were people above the age of 80. 13 people have gone autopsies. And then Norway has withdrawn vaccination for elderly people. This is people who are frail and elderly should not be given the vaccine. They are giving the Pfizer vaccine. Chinese health experts called to suspend Pfizer mRNA vaccine for elderly after Norway deaths. And then they talk about Global Times editorial. Why were US media silent on Pfizer vaccine deaths? So these are the news items which I have picked up for discussion as the first discussion. I will make the case out of it to discuss so that we can spend around the first 15 minutes on this particular thing. Now, this virus in my body causes 3 things. This virus is immunogenic. Therefore, it will produce, this is virogenic, so this will produce a viral reaction. This virus is also immunogenic. Therefore, it will produce in my body an inflammatory response. So I would say this is cytogenic virus. It produces a dysregulated cytoimmune response. And this virus is also thrombogenic because it produces thrombogenicity. Now we have 2 types of vaccines available. One we are mRNA vaccine, and in another we are directly making the protein directly entering inside the body. Normally 2 months back when we saw the data, and everywhere we were talking about that mRNA as a whole. I'm not talking about a vaccine. So mRNA is inflammatory, is a fact. So there is no denial of the fact that mRNA is inflammatory. Any mRNA injected will cause inflammation. So therefore, they created nanoparticle lipid material around the vaccine so that A, it is not destroyed, B, it is not causing hyperimmune inflammatory response. But this Norway results shows couple of things. 23 people died, most of them above the age of 80. 2/3 of them have undergone autopsy. The preliminary report says that they were fragile, elderly people who could not tolerate even the milder side effects of the vaccine, which would mean, all of them developed a cytokine response, exaggerated cytokine response to the vaccine, and died. And now they say is elderly should not be given the vaccine. So the basic purpose of vaccine is lost. If 80 plus people are not given vaccine and only healthy people are given vaccine, then the purpose of vaccination gets dropped because our purpose is to save those lives. That's what the basic purpose is. Then we come back to the basics of our learnings and teachings over the past in vaccination. They always have been saying that for elderly and comorbid and fragile people, you should not use active vaccines. You should only use killed vaccines. And that now you can see the China responding, because China also wants to enter into the field and they have a killed vaccine. So every movement by any country is a game of economics. So China's reaction, basically they didn't say that use our vaccine. They say don't use mRNA vaccine in elderly plus. So in a fragile person, all our life we have been saying use a killed vaccine. So the lesson learned from Norway can be interpolated in Indian circumstances is that fragile people should be given Covaxin and not Covishield. Over for discussion for the first 15 minutes in the part one of our discussions today. So anybody, if you have not read the story, just go to Google, just put down Norwegian deaths, 23 deaths. The whole international media, minus in the US, is the whole European media is full of 23 posts out of 30,000 vaccines given. Remember, in Norway, only 30,000 vaccines have been given. 23 deaths would mean 1 per 1,000, which is very, very high. Death should not be more than 1 per million, 1 per 10 lakhs, that is 1 per million. 1 per 1,000 deaths are very, very, very high. It basically indicates that the vaccine is also causing immune dysregulation. Over to everybody to start discussing one by one. Starting from our guest, Dr. Tanjin. Yes.
Good morning, everyone. Professor Agarwal, this is very good news. I could not actually follow up on the vaccine part because my other colleagues are doing, but I'll be very happy to follow it up and share with my colleagues who are working on. I think Bhutan is actually going to vaccinate similar population, the elderly, those with comorbidity, and the frontliners. And I think Bhutan is going for Covaxin. So let's see how the informations come out of this. I think we haven't got a vaccine yet, and maybe our team who is working on vaccine will be very careful. But this information you brought in is very, very valid. And my parents who are now in 80s and grandparents who are in 90s, they need to be very careful about this. So I have no other technical comments, but thank you for sharing.
Angelique. Angelique.
Morning.
Good morning.
Thank you. I was not aware of this deaths. It has not yet hit our social media yet, but it's very concerning. And as well, I agree with the previous speaker that the purpose of vaccinating is you want to protect your elderly, you want to protect your vulnerable people, as well people with severe comorbidities. So this also again raised the question, can you then only vaccinate the healthy people, and what is then the use of that? Because you know, the people who puts the strain on the healthcare system is the sick and the vulnerable and the elderly. I will listen today, and I will take this back to my board as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else who wants to make a comment?
Dr. KK, can I ask you which
Yes.
one in this Norway or the Scandinavian one which you're reporting, which was the vaccine that they used for the 30,000?
Pfizer. Pfizer.
Oh, so the RNA,
Messenger
mRNA.
RNA Pfizer BioNTech vaccine given to 30,000 people. And as per the media report, they have now sold it to people above who are fragile, who are above the age of 80. They have modified that it will only be given to the younger people, non-comorbid conditions. So what I'm trying to say is that the first thing, the first indication of the vaccine is, okay, somebody asked me, should I take a vaccine? So I tell him, close your eyes and ask yourself, if I develop the virus, what are my chances of dying? So what is your high risk? And if he says, yes, I'm at a risk of dying, I said, go ahead with the vaccine. And if these patients become contraindications, that means you cannot tolerate the viral disease, even a mild viral disease, that will be a problem. Because younger people in any way are not going to get anything out of the virus disease. So this news that elderly are more susceptible, that means messenger RNA vaccine is causing inflammatory condition. That's all. Inflammatory response is seen in messenger RNA. And those people who cannot tolerate even mild inflammatory response should not be given this particular vaccine, would mean that we have some problems of this vaccine. Messenger
Dr. Agarwal.
Yes.
Yeah, actually, I'm following the international media also. So I have not noticed. Actually, I joined late. So what I infer.
I'll just show it to you what I have
No,
started.
I'm just. I just
Yeah, go ahead.
infer that some media probably you have taken consideration the media news, some news.
I'll just go back
But
again. I
but
started with this.
it's very worrying. If it is so worrying that it should have come in the premier
Yes.
news.
Yes,
So I
yes.
have not seen. I have not seen
I'll
the
come back to this.
BBC.
I'm only saying is these are the 4 reports what I have seen. This is a
Only thing is that Dr. Agarwal. Only thing is that they have clarified the Pfizer, and they are investigating a case. A doctor died, and he was healthy. He was near about just about 50 years of age, and he died after he got vaccinated in the first dose. First or second dose also? No, first dose I think, because second dose
No,
just
I
they have
will
started
come
now.
back to that. But before
Yeah.
that, let me show you where I'm discussing this issue. This is a report which has come from downtoearth.org. And this is a report from Norway Wants of Vaccine, ndtv.com. This is a report from Global Times. So this is a news from Global Times. So these are the news which has come from international media, and it also talks about why U.S. media is silent on Pfizer vaccine death.
No,
Because
not even BBC also. I have seen
I'm-
BBC also. Al Jazeera also I have seen. They haven't reported.
So Saurabh, can you see the BBC and put down whether it's reported it or not?
No, not
The question,
reported.
no, just we'll check it up.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
the question here is, so Dr. Chong has also joined. So my idea is only simple thing is I'm only taking some international reports, and the international report says that this vaccine, first of all, let's see, Dr. Chong has received the vaccine or not?
Yeah, yes.
Good. So congratulations.
Yes.
So congratulations. I saw it on the website, but I still wanted
Yeah.
officially to congratulate you.
Okay.
Thank you. It all went very well.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to say is that in Norway, there are some reports of 23 deaths after the Pfizer vaccine in people who are 80 plus. So we are not discussing safety in 80 minus. Remember, we are not, the point of discussion is not safety in 80 minus people. We are only discussing in people who are fragile and who are nursing home patients, who are sick. If we give it to them, what will happen? That means this vaccine is causing some degree of inflammatory response, which these fragile people are not being able to tolerate and die. Whether they are dying of high CRP, IL-6, or whether they are dying of sudden thrombosis, we don't know. The point of discussion is only one, that old age teaching has been that in fragile people always give a killed vaccine. Giving a very active vaccine, so mRNA is the most active vaccine. Number 2 will be live virus vaccine. Number 3 will be part vaccine. And the fourth will be killed vaccine. So I'm only trying to say is our old age teaching. If you remember, long time back, we said that killed vaccine will be the safest. This was our statement at least 3 months back. So therefore, that is now looks like coming true, that in fragile and elderly people, you may have to choose a killed vaccine. Over for discussions.
Can I add on?
Yes.
Of course, the fact that even 50 plus category of people, whether fragile or not, if death is happening, it has to be taken very seriously. The number, statistical significance is very high, because normally this number of deaths with any vaccine program should not happen. So that needs in-depth study and review of the cases before it can be still pushed in the market. Of course, as far as India is concerned, it is not a matter of concern, because we are not choosing mRNA vaccine because the storage temperature has to be -20 and all, and availability and all of the problems are there. So we are voting for Covaxin and Covishield. Another aspect is when you talk of herd immunity, if 60% of the population are immunized, they have immunity, then naturally the whole population is protected, because the virus tend to subside. So even if somebody is going ahead with the program, you have to be choosy about the age group and other comorbid conditions, so that this high-risk category is eliminated. But then obviously, when 60% herd immunity is obtained, even without immunization, this segment of population tend to be protected. So that is what I would like to suggest.
Thank you. So I just want to add that the virus has 3 responses. The virus has a viral response, inflammatory response, and it has a thrombotic response. And we know the marker, and the marker is baseline C-reactive protein. If before the disease, if your CRP is high, you are going to get a exaggerated inflammatory response. From that point of view, I feel that if before vaccination, if you are in a pro-thrombotic or a pro-inflammatory state, and if you are taking a vaccine, then it has to be treated on the same lines. If you see earlier sign of inflammation, steroid may help after vaccination. So a vaccine-induced hyperinflammatory and pro-thrombotic state should be treated urgently and aggressively. That's what my take into this, that all patients who receive the vaccination, who are fragile, whose baseline CRP is high or baseline prothrombotic state is high, if they receive the vaccine, if they show any evidence of a hyperinflammation, they should immediately be given steroid and anticoagulation. That's my take into it. Now, the second part of today's discussion, we will have 3 discussions. In the second part of today's discussion, for 10 minutes, Dr. Saurabh wants to show all of us what our group has done in terms of educating the society. Saurabh wants to show a video. And then we will come back to the third part of the discussion, that will be the results announced of AD26 by New England Journal of Medicine yesterday.
So can I play?
Yes. K.K. Agarwal, President, Confederation of Medical Association of Asia and Oceania. Heart Care Foundation of India and past National President, Indian Medical Association.
When the containment zone is there, which is absolutely the input and outflow is just checked, and all their infrastructures are provided by the additional manpower. They are not allowed to come out of that particular area. And if small, even what we started is fever clinics inside the containment. Have any problem, they need not come to the hospital. Even for just saving, come to the hospital, they need not come. So the containment zone or well infrastructure facilities are there. So as a policy of that, isolation and support is a hallmark for that. So we not only contain, but we are providing the support. So that makes the people to voluntarily accept their containment. And otherwise, they did one. So we have tried to collect the data of all the doctors who will be the first phase vaccination needed. As you mentioned that the comorbid doctors or aged doctors or doctors who are treating directly in the hospitals, in ICUs and in the wards or in the family physician level or a consulting level, those will be doctors will be given the vaccination in the first phase. Followed by that, their entire staff, assistants, right from reception to the wards and the ICU doctor, staff nurses and peons and everybody. And the third phase will be, of course, the patients below the age of 50.
Our profession is under the best circumstances. We face challenges all the time, clinical challenges, infrastructure challenges, health inequities and health disparities in our country. And now, encouraged by what CMAAO does, I strongly recommend and hope that you're able to continue this under these difficult circumstances.
We really need a vaccine to open our economy because we have no hinterland. We are just a small little island. You know, Singapore is no stranger to first mover vaccines. So in 1959, if I'm not mistaken, we vaccinated 200,000 with the polio vaccine when it first came out. And remember that vaccine was only 50% effective, but it wiped out polio. And in 1987, Singapore was also the first few countries in the world to institute hepatitis B vaccine at birth for all babies. And
I-90 patients during the spring. And that's not only because the borders are closed. Testing, contact tracing is important. Whole society, not only COVID. So this was a drop in our GDP. It dropped very. Schools are open. Next one. And herd immunity was not official part of the strategy, but it can picture you see number 2. That's the end. Oh, thank you so much. I am following your talk, so I'm very happy that what you do. Fine. I use that when I'm teaching and speaking here in Sweden. So I'm going to thank you for that. I have given the recommendation on face masks in the subway and other places where people gather in public spaces.
Mask is important in high susceptibility areas, yes. And 95 mask with 12 is required for healthcare professionals, but yes, if you are a silent carrier, you can spread this thing. But I would rather prefer that a visor has to be used by healthcare professionals when they are sitting in the room. And hand hygiene is...
This is what Dr. Rajesh Sharma is talking about, a visor which can become like this.
Emerging in the recent years is that the clinical medicine is moving towards evidence-based medicine. Only thing is they will need to have the time to spend on their patient, either if in government sector or private sector. Today the pressure on time because of the workload is so high. So unless otherwise there is some capping on the number of patients a doctor can see and how much minutes he has to spend on a patient. These are very vital institutions which have to be looked at before these things can be institutionalized.
As elderly people usually present with some chronic disease and they usually are taking some other medications, we need to be very careful when recommending psychotropic drugs to decrease the anxiety and also to improve depression in those people, because sometimes there are an interaction
among the use of those psychotropic drugs and other drugs that these people are taking for other kinds of diseases, and even an interaction, between those psychotropic drugs and basic diseases that they still prevent.
Our population is about 10 times less than in India. With this 14 days quarantine time, and you can come to Japan. The Japan Society for Infectious Disease recommends antiviral drugs such as remdesivir or dexamethasone, favipiravir or cyclogenide, toricizumab.
Many parents hesitated to let their children receive the flu vaccine from Sanofi. However, 1 week later, when Singapore and also Korea authorities had confirmed that there's no association between the influenza flu shot vaccines with the mortality in Korea and Taiwan, Singapore Health Authority had lifted a suspension of vaccination of the Sanofi vaccine. The Hong Kong people had again get some in the vaccine again.
COVID-19 has not broken the system, but it has exposed the broken system. I'm the one who ever believes in the cooperation between our region, subcontinent region. I believe in the cooperation between the SAARC countries, the Asia, and certainly with all solidarity, we head towards the global health system and global peace.
More than the COVID vaccine and all that, it's the SOP that counts. You don't go and hug the people, though you love the person. You shouldn't be hugging, you should be shaking hands, you should not be knocking, not elbowing, and not kicking. We have a 40% B40 and about 40% M40. They can't be locked down and they cannot be sitting at home without earning money. They need the finances. The government can do only to that level. But if the lockdown comes on a continuous basis because of the carelessness and the people's attitude, then it's going to suffer everybody. The economy, our Malaysian economy is already bleeding.
Individuals unknowingly transmitting and the HIV and increasing and infect others. So it's been found to be. I think there's a far more stigma and discrimination with the HIV. On the other side, another front, probably the corona is far more infectious in terms of spreading. We know that in terms of HIV/AIDS, the infection.
In July 2020, but it was followed by few people only at the time. So the inclusion of punishment by mobile phone, actually mobile phone, it is actually unofficially the people sometimes they're taking. But we don't have this ivermectin in the guideline protocol, which is national one, and actually there was research is going on actually on ivermectin.
So if you again look at the first wave. Here we had multiple lineages that were circular and vaccines, and this is also very important. Currently, we don't understand everything, and we started here in early in November, seeing a new slight upward in all sides because we don't know. We are speculating, and it seems the correct answers is what me and you are thinking about. But this virus is on its own. We can you don't know. But it is actually very, very concerning that it cannot neutralize that.
Total PCR positive cases till now is 2 lakh of the bed in the hospital also and in the isolation center also. That's why we told measures because nowadays even though government has not allowed to open the cinema theater doing the PCR test, only those who are coming from outside the country.
Beginning of February, I hope so. The next one, like you used in the end of our talk, and the wear of masks correctly, and we had a big campaign, and we have 20. It's a unified health system.
Avoid social contacts, wash your hands, and wear a mask, and of course keep 2-meter distance. जो spread एशियन कंट्रीज में हुआ है और जो मोर्टेलिटी फिगर्स है ये बहुत कम है as compared to European or American, North American countries. लेकिन चक्कर ये है कि इंग्लैंड में जो मॉर्टेलिटी हुई है वो एशियन लोगों की बहुत ज्यादा हुई.
I don't think so. It is not related to new mutant virus. It is related to, we think, early normalization. There is a mutation in Turkey. We detected a few days ago, but it is not responsible for the FAS2. We have detected the UK strain in Turkey, but there is no find any South America strain in Turkey.
Dr. Mathanda Pillai, who came last week, and we are in touch with the Secretary General of WMA, Treasurer of WMA, to get added into it. So we are looking for more and more countries to participate so that we can request this to the CMAAO website. So this link can go to the CMAAO website. Over to Dr. Chong.
Thank you, President, and always good to see everybody here. I promise I will show up to make sure that you all didn't think that I had collapsed from the vaccine. But it all went very well, and didn't even feel it. Had a bit of soreness 24 hours later. That went away. No fever, no systemic problems, so it was all good. I had to fill in a long form for contraindications. And coming back to your contraindications, I wonder if these recently reported deaths in Norway and Germany and so on are because they were not strict on the contraindications, or as President has said, perhaps in the very elderly and frail, we might want to consider doing killed virus vaccine. But certainly here we took the contraindications quite seriously. Everybody had to fill in a form, and if you and it's a kind of form where they can prosecute you if you fill it in wrongly. You know what I mean? So the contraindications were taken quite seriously, and we all waited half an hour. And we've since rolled out 4 new vaccination centers in Singapore, one in the north, south, east, west of the island, and with resuscitation facilities and ability to scale up the vaccinations. We understand that more of these centers will be built soon and fast to try to get our target of vaccinating everybody within a year in time. So these are some of the things I've noticed during the week and my experience there. Otherwise, it all went quite well and quite well tolerated. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I open up for further discussion, I just want to quickly share the results of AD26 virus vaccine, which has been declared a couple of days back in New England Journal of Medicine. I'll just read out their summary. It talks about the background of this is that efficacious vaccines are urgently needed. So a candidate vaccine. So what was this vaccine? That is AD26 CoV2 S protein is a recombinant. So remember the word, it's a recombinant. So it's not a virus, it's not a live vaccine. It's a recombinant, replication incompetent, adenovirus serotype 26 vector encoding a full length. Just remember, this is a full length and stabilized spike protein. So you have to remember this is a full length. So it is full length means it contains all the 3 parts of spike protein and stabilized CoV2 spike protein. Methods. In this multi-center placebo-controlled phase 1 and 2 trial, the age group was again only 18 to 25. Cohort 1, and those 65 years and elder, cohort 3. So they have taken elderly to receive the vaccine at a dose of 5 into 10⁵ viral particles, low dose, or 1:10:11 viral particles per millimeter, or a placebo. So there were 3 arms. longer term data comprising a single dose regime. So remember, they are talking about a single dose regime. With a 2-dose regimes are being collected in cohort 2, those results are not reported here. The primary results were safety and reactogenicity of each dose schedule. Results. After the administration of the first vaccine dose in 805 participants in cohort 1 and 3, that means low dose and high dose, and after the second dose in cohort 1, the most frequent solicited adverse events were fatigue, headache, myalgia, injection pain site. The most frequent systemic adverse event was fever. Systemic adverse events were less common in cohort 3 than in cohort 1, and in those who received the low dose vaccine than in those who received the high dose vaccine. Reactogenicity were lower after the second dose. So this is an important finding. Neutralizing antibody titer against wild type were detected in 90% or more of all who participated on day 29 after the first vaccine dose and reached 100% by day 57. Titer remained stable until at least 71 days. A second dose provided an increase in the titer by a factor of 2.6 to 2.9. Spike binding antibody response were similar to neutralizing antibody responses. Now, on day 14, CD4 T cell responses were detected in 83% of participants in cohort 1 and 67 of cohort 3, with a clear skewing towards type 1 helper cells, which is what you want. Conclusion, the safety and immunogenicity profile of AD26 support further development of vaccine candidates. And if I go back to the conclusions again, and it talks about the responses, and it says, so basically what it talks about is AD26 virus. Let us see the group 1 and group 3 again. Group 1 was 18 to 25 and cohort 3 was 65 to others. So they are saying the antigenic response was better in people between 18 to 55 years of age, and it was poorer in 65 years of age and older. So this is the first vaccine which is showing a good response on a single dose regime. And all over the world, people are talking about is that after a AD26 virus gets available, and if it turns out to be a single dose vaccine, it will help the vaccine immunization process in the world. For comments, people who might have read this article. So
Dr. Agarwal, you have already mentioned that is a second dose is given.
No, they have said they have 3 arms. In the one arm they have the second dose. In one arm there is no second dose. So they are showing even a single dose is doing good enough. That's what they are inferring. So they are saying a single arm. So the idea is that now the second generation vaccines. So I'm now preparing a talk for all of you. Second generation, first generation is out. First generation means the vaccination has started. The first generation is out. Now people are talking about the second generation to cover the whole population. And in the second generation, we will have, the second generation will be full of single dose vaccines. The basic priority will be a single dose and longer lasting immunity. So all the now work will be on a single dose, long lasting immunity. And they are claiming we will be the first one in a single dose, long lasting immunity. I have to read more about the whole article, but I thought of bringing it that we should also be updating ourselves. Though we get our vaccine, but remember we also need a vaccine after 1 year again. So we can't, this vaccine will not last for a year. So if we need a vaccine after 1 year, we should update ourselves on second generation vaccines. Over for discussion.
Can I just ask,
yes.
regarding, again, was the elderly excluded? I know that it said 65 years, but the fragile patients, exactly the same that we have now seen with the Pfizer vaccine, were they included in these studies, or are these studies
So
predominantly
they are saying
excluded?
65-year and older were included.
But
Cohort
nothing
3.
about whether they had
So
been
let me come back to the results again. Let me read it again.
Thanks.
Because it will also help me in understanding the whole thing. So they says, let's see that only there are 2 slides. In this multi-center placebo-controlled trial, phase 1 and phase 2 trial, we randomly assigned healthy adults. Remember, they were not frail. So they picked up healthy adults between the age of 18 and 55 and those 65 years of age or older to receive the virus at 2 doses, low dose or a high dose. Okay, so the low dose was 5 into 10:10 or high dose was 1:10:11. Longer term data with a 2-dose regime, they says we are not publishing at the moment. The results. After the administration of the first vaccine in cohort 1 and 3 and the second dose in cohort 1, the most frequently solicited adverse events, so and so, so. Let us see, reactogenicity was lower after the second dose. This is an important observation. Based on that, they are saying second dose may not be given. This is reactogenicity was lower after the second dose. Okay, that is in terms of side effects. Neutralizing antibody titers against that wild type virus was detected in 90% or more of all participants on day 29 after the first vaccine dose and reached 100% by day 57 with a further regardless of vaccine dose or age group. So they said antibodies kept on rising and they became 100% by day 57. Titer remained stable at least up to day 71. The second dose provided an increase in the titer by 2.6 to 2.9 times. Spike binding antibody response was similar to neutralizing antibody response. And then they are talking about they have a classical Th1 response. So they do talk about the benefit of second dose, but they are promoting it as a single dose vaccine. That's the discussion.
Thank you so much. I just want to ask or need to make 2 more remarks. One is the AstraZeneca that's currently going to come into South Africa. On the trials, they did not include any patient with that was uncontrolled with non-communicable diseases or severely, well, obviously you won't take severely ill patients, but it is a concern if uncontrolled non-communicable diseases were not included, patients with that into the studies, as a lot of the countries are actually, especially in the third world, are suffering with uncontrolled non-communicable diseases. So it might be a problem giving that to them. Also, you know, so AstraZeneca, or it seems to me that most of these vaccines are not really tested on people who are, you know, with comorbidities
No,
and
none of them.
control.
None of them have been studied on comorbid conditions. That should be clear. None of them have been studied on comorbid conditions. They are healthy people. If you read the first line, healthy people.
Yeah. No, I understand. But that, again, that brings us, you know, who's the people who put the strain on the hospitals? It's the sick people or the people with comorbidities. We have said it and seen it many times. So, you know, sometimes it might be a problem. You think you are vaccinating, and then we need to be honest with the people out there and telling them that we are actually vaccinating healthy people or people with one comorbidity or 2, but very well controlled. Maybe that can increase the, you know, people to adhere to their treatments as well going into future. But this might be a problem going forward. with vaccinations that you think you're going to get herd immunity across the world, but you're not going to receive it. Thanks.
Dr. Agarwal, this serum also, they have also conducted trial, which I have gone through. And can you just inform us whether the question of Dr. Angelique can be answered that way? Whether any such of trial has been given on elderly
I am not aware of trial happening on sick people, on fragile people, or people with comorbid conditions. I will read out and come back next time. I can give you a complete analysis of Covaxin versus Covishield versus the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. I have the full data with me, but then I need to spend some time to understand that. If I want to show you the data, I can show you the data right away. And that is campaign, Mala, Trinity, Shukran. So if you really want to see the data, so if I see the data of this is Covishield this is that Oxford data. It contains 5×10⁻10 viral particles. It's a recombinant replication deficient chimpanzee adenovirus spike protein, genetically modified on human embryonic kidney cells. And this is they have two groups. They have given to, let me come back to, now this is adverse drug reaction, pharmacological, clinical efficacy against COVID-19. So you can see number of COVID-19 cases, 30, 108 after first dose. This was the whole efficacy. But if I go back to antibody response to Covishield, they only show at it that the antibody response on 28 days was 8,086. And after 28 days of second dose, it crossed to 29,034. That's only they are saying. And they also talk about total antibody against S1, S2 antibodies. This is the only Covaxin. So I don't have a data of how many people they included. And let me see if they have. Yes, Covishield. Then 20,745 participants age more than 80, randomized to COVID or control vaccine. Then 12,000 received at least one dose of COVID-19. Median follow-up was 105 days. So that they had age group 18 to 64 years, 90%, more than 65, 9.7%. Asians were only 3.5%. Female male ratio was this much. So out of this Covishield trial, these are the results available, that they did have 10% of the people above the age of 65, which meant out of 24,000 people, 2,400 people were above the age of 65. But they have not told about whether they were comorbid or not. That data I'll have to read into the minuteness of this, whether they were healthy people or not. But I think the vaccine trials are always on the healthy people. And then I come back to the Covaxin trial. Let me see if they have some Covaxin trial. 4 arms, results, reactogenicity and immunogenicity. Then this talks about primary endpoint, secondary endpoint. They also don't declare. They only give you the values, but they are not giving their age. So this is 6 myeloid LGL. No, I'll have to go through it to find out the fragile people. At this moment, I presume that fragile people were not included in any trial.
Dr. Agarwal, do you think that America is hiding or just not noticing it? Because they
No,
have
it's not
given lot of vaccinations there.
See, we do expect
Pfizer.
Inflammatory responses in fragile people. Scientific community, we are very clear. In fragile people, we do expect inflammatory response. I am asking one thing: when this virus causes inflammatory response, why shouldn't the vaccine cause an inflammatory response? It has to cause. And in those cases, you have to anticipate and treat it. I am very clear in my mind, this vaccine is a part of the virus. And if it is a part of the virus, it has to cause a same response as that of a virus. Therefore, we do expect some degree of immunogenicity in terms of inflammation and thrombosis that has to be tackled. If it happens, tackle it. So I'm only putting a point is that we shouldn't go back blindly and say that nothing is going to happen. We should say this vaccine will produce a milder illness, and that milder illness also needs to be treated. If you develop a milder illness with the vaccine, treat it, anticipate it, and treat it. That's what I'm saying.
Thank you. I fully agree with you, because that is to be honest with the people out there. So if you can just be honest, and the governments allow us to be honest, then it would be fine. I just would like to know, in India, what vaccines are you currently using? That's the one thing. And the other thing still of concern for us in South Africa, we are not sure whether any of these vaccines are effective against our current strain of that V2, as well as the 484.
Okay, so let me come back to number one is India is starting its vaccination program today. It already might have started. And we have two vaccines. One is Oxford vaccine, biosimilar, made in India under a license. So it may not be exactly the same as the Oxford vaccine of UK. It is indigenized version of the Oxford vaccine made in India by a pharmaceutical company under a agreement. That's one. Number two, we have a vaccine, which is a killed vaccine, which is 100% indigenously made in India, and that is called a Covaxin. Both the vaccines are starting today. Till yesterday, it was a 3-page consent form. So there was a reactions all over the country. I've been told just 5 minutes back that ministry has withdrawn the consent form, that no consent needs to be taken, because people were hesitant after reading the consent form that who takes over the liability. And I have also been given to understand with the morning newspaper, which says that if there are any side effects, government will compensate them. That means if there is a death, government will compensate. And if the treatment is required for any side effect, it will be the responsibility of the government. These are the three new things which I have just heard about it. Now in India, they have not given us a choice. You take this one or that one. At the moment, it is not available commercially. So this will be given free of cost. You cannot choose which one you want to take, which I feel they should have left it to the doctors to decide which vaccine you need. The reason being, I still feel that if you are a comorbid and if you are a fragile, you should go for a killed vaccine and not the live vaccine, or not the recombinant vaccine. Even a recombinant vaccine will be inflammatory in nature. This is what my personal assumption is. So the last question what Angelique has asked is about the mutations. So the mutations which are of importance are 484 mutation. 501 mutation is not that important. 6970 deletion, 6970 deletion, which is seen in UK, which was earlier seen in Denmark, is basically a hindrance for the diagnostics. It makes the diagnostics unreliable, but not the vaccine. So 6970, which is seen in UK, originated from Denmark, is not a concern as far as vaccine is concerned. 501 has been seen in the past in cases who have received multiple plasma therapies, convalescent plasma therapies, with multiple mutations in immunocompromised people. So we may have 501 ultimately may have some hindrance with the plasma therapy or monoclonal antibodies. Then we come back to two more mutations seen in South Africa. One of them, the important one, is 484. And that 484 mutation is very, very, very important, because that's going to take away monoclonal antibodies resistance with that. That may change our vaccines in future. 484. 484 has been seen in Brazil. It has been seen in Japan. It has been seen in South Africa. And it has been seen in India. In Bombay also, they have seen 484 problem. But the question which comes here today is, let's take killed vaccine, is a whole virus vaccine. You will get you cannot get, you will develop enough antibodies that may not, the efficacy of a vaccine may reduce, but it will not become zero. So with mutations, with every mutation, efficiency of a vaccine may reduce, but cannot become zero, number one. Number two, every new batch of the vaccine, remember, every new batch of the vaccine will incorporate a new strain. At this moment, no government and no scientists are talking about it. The reason being, they have to dispose of their existing vaccines. The day their existing vaccines are disposed of, you will see another vaccine war coming, and everybody will say, I have incorporated the new strain, I have incorporated the new strain, I have incorporated the new strain. That's expected. So at this moment, no company can say that I have incorporated the new strain, would mean the older strain is gone. Their investment is gone. So the older strains may cause some degree of loss of antigenicity, but they will still act. They are saying is that as far as South African strain versus the UK strain, vaccine will affect more the South African strain than the UK strain because of 484 mutation. Angelique, you want to add something?
Dr. KK, just an interruption here. I would like to find out what is the criteria in India. I mean, who are the people who get the vaccination first?
India, they have identified 1 crore, that means 10 million people who are healthcare providers, 27 crore people, to 20 million people who are other frontline workers. Okay, frontline workers is not health, non-health frontline worker, police, the people who sweep the roads, and then 270 million people above the age of 50 without comorbid, or below the age of 50 with comorbid. Okay. Now, drive which is starting today, the drive which is starting today, I can only tell you about Delhi, where I live. They have said we will not give it to anybody who is above 50. So today's drive, the first day drive will be only for 50 minus people. They don't want to take any chances. They want to show success. So the first few days you will see vaccine given only to healthy people. So they will be giving it to people who are 50 minus on the first few days, so that it builds up, it takes away the vaccine hesitancy. Because no company will afford to have some major side effects occurring in the first few days.
Dr. Agarwal,
yes,
you are just telling, thank you so much. You are just telling that this is the government is taking the responsibility for any sort of severe adverse effect, something like death or like that. So
I will read about it. I have just been given this information. I have not confirmed.
No, I'm just asking you another thing. This is emergency use authorization, where the manufacturer takes the responsibility. So
see,
why the country government is taking the responsibility?
No. What will happen is, see, the US is talking about pay people. US, there is a debate going on that you should pay people to get vaccinated. Forget about getting a person will not, if you say you are responsible, we are not going to look after, the vaccination will fail. It is at this moment, vaccination is a country's priority. That is for other vaccines, not in this. In a pandemic state, vaccine compensation will come from the government. And this is an opportunity for people like Marthanda Pillai in the IMA, that I have been talking about it for the last 3 months, that government will fix the compensation, that if you die, this will be the compensation. And that's what I'm saying. When it comes to government, they fix the compensation. When it is not in the government, they say you can be given any amount.
No, but you know, this is the emergency use authorization, which means it's like that the government will not take the responsibility.
Then nobody will take. Then nobody will take. If the government does not take the responsibility, the vaccination.
But are you sure? Are you sure it is followed there in the US also?
Let me see. Just
yes.
1 second.
What does emergency use authorization means?
No, an emergency use authorization does not mean that. No.
International meeting. Huh.
I will see at the responsibility. I think government will take the responsibility because emergency use authorization has been given by the government, not by the.
Yeah,
not by the
that is what I'm telling. This is because emergency use authorization. That is why they will not take the responsibility.
No.
That means emergency authorization means like.
I can show you just 1 second. Let me read about it. I will show you I will read this out. This is important for all the countries and for policymakers in other countries. Compensation if Covaxin causes serious side effects. Okay, now let me read.
Yeah.
Beneficiaries who receive Covaxin, a Bharat Biotech vaccine, will be paid a compensation if they suffer a serious adverse event that is proven to be causally related to the vaccine. The compensation was one of the points highlighted on top of the consent form shared with vaccination centers on Friday. Vaccination sites at the form stated that the beneficiaries would be provided care in government designated and authorized centers or hospitals if they suffered severe side effects. The issue of liability has been a bone of contention between vaccine makers and the government, with the former having made demands that it may be identified against the mishaps. So how much I have not read it, but they are clearly talking about compensation will be given if Covaxin causes serious side effects. I will read about this story more in detail.
But they are telling about the treatment actually in terms of
the first word is compensation. Compensation is above from the treatment. Compensation is always, now let me see.
But this is for India, Dr.
Yes.
KK?
No, but it is for India, but then all of you can raise these points in your respective countries. Today,
that is also only for the Covaxin they are telling. Only for the Covaxin they are telling. Covaxin, which is produced by the Indian company.
They have not written the amount of compensation.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So the point that Dr. Yamal was making is that it's only for the Covaxin. That is an Indian company, but you've got two types of vaccination. So the other vaccination, if you get it, will you also be compensated then from the government side?
They have not put down. They have put down only for Covaxin.
Covaxin, yes.
Covaxin has been given a permission without completion of phase 3 trial.
So which means it does not cover the Oxford vaccine.
No.
Yeah.
See, Covaxin is being given as a part of the trial because the phase 3 trial is still on. And that, so remember, every country, that Covaxin phase 3 trial is not yet completed. It is a use by the government.
But whether partial result has been given or not.
Yes, phase 1, phase 2 trials are there.
Phase 3 partial result.
I mean, they are submitting the data, but the full trial has not yet been published.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I think the compensation is an important issue. But however, remember the saga that originated in Korea when there were influenza vaccine caused Guillain-Barré syndrome or other things. There were some distortion of the criteria, I think, of the diseases. That is because of the financial motivation. That is the intention, the incentive to get the compensation that some citizens might not disclose all the details. Say, for example, last time about Guillain-Barré syndrome is a post-infectious complication of viral infections or vaccination. But then half of them had an incubation period as noted by the compensation records, that they only have 2 days of the interval between the injection and the onset of the Guillain-Barré. What I'm talking about is when there's compensation, there could be financial incentive for those citizens to claim compensation. I think the doctors have to stand firm in the medical evidence of those so-called side effects. Say, for example, I don't think fever could be a side effect of the vaccination, because there's fever, then that means there's a good reaction to the vaccination. It's not a side effect, it's an expected effect of the vaccine. So that's just an example. And I want to also ask the president, do you have any idea, are there ongoing researches about the vitamin D and zinc in protecting people from from this COVID-19 and the relation to the efficiency of the COVID-19 vaccines? Because last time you mentioned very well that vitamin D and zinc are quite important, although they are not yet randomized controlled trials. I think vitamin D is such a cheap and quite accessible vitamin that we could give to our citizens. Could the government really mandatory fortify our diet intake to include vitamin D? And that's one thing I like to ask, whether India would implement this thing. And the second thing is about the AstraZeneca. I missed the point that whether the new studies now had determined the first dose or the only dose would be the half dose or the full dose, because initially they said the half dose of the first dose is even more effective in preventing the severe and the mild symptoms of COVID-19. I missed that point, sorry.
I will answer that. The question of half dose versus full dose came because they thought that human body may be having antibodies against the adenovirus. That was an assumption. And therefore they said, if you are going to give 2 full doses, the body may already have an antibody response to adenovirus and the vaccine may not work. So therefore they presumed in an arm where they gave half dose and a full dose. Because their full dose responded very well, they are in talk with Sputnik, and there is a debate going on that you give adenovirus human in 1 dose and the second you give a chimpanzee dose. That's also discussion going on. But the regulators have not given a clearance for half dose and full dose. But theoretically and scientifically, it makes sense to give it half dose and a full dose. Scientifically, it makes sense. Their results also show the same, but the regulators have not given the permission. Even in India, the permission is only for the full 2 doses. With that. And that's what it is. What was the other question? The second one was vitamin D. So vitamin D, there are trials going on all over the world, including in India. Vitamin D down-regulates ACE2 receptors, and it reduces, in all respiratory conditions severity, vitamin D works very well. So there are studies going on. One of the study has been negative in India, where they have used vitamin D in ICU cases and high dose, and they have not seen any response. But it is a well-known fact about vitamin D that vitamin D deficient patients respond poorly to any respiratory infection because they impair the ACE2 level working at that particular moment. So we use vitamin D. There are 2 protocols going on vitamin D in India. One is 60,000 daily for 3 days, followed by 60,000 monthly. This is a high dose vitamin D in treatment. The second is you give them 2,000 units every day. So most of our patients on day one will receive a 60,000 units of vitamin D as a part of the STAT treatment.
What about prevention? Will India implement any mandatory measures to increase intake of vitamin D to protect the citizens?
No, there is
Not
no
yet.
universal prevention program declared by the government. We are giving all our patients that you should be on zinc, you should be on vitamin D, and you should be on vitamin C daily. But that's not been recommended by the government.
What is the dosage recommended, Dr. KK, in
Normal
terms of zinc, vitamin D, and vitamin C?
So when it comes to treatment, people are talking about two regimes. One is very high dose, 100 milligram of zinc, 1000 milligram of vitamin C, and 60,000 units of vitamin D on a daily basis. That's a high dose method. But most of the people otherwise are saying is even a therapeutic, a normal RDA of 5 milligram of zinc is as good. But we are giving 50 to 100 milligram of zinc every day during illness.
Is it taken prophylactically?
Most of people are taking, but without recommendations. That has become like a norm. It has become
So
like
when you take it prophylactically, what sort of dosage is recommended?
when they are taking even 5 milligram is sufficient.
Okay.
Most of the drugs people are containing 5 milligram.
For vitamin D, it is 600 unit, I think.
In India,
Daily, vitamin D.
We recommend 2,000 units every day in India.
For adults.
Can I say something, President?
Yes.
In Singapore, we have just on this method of compensation, we have introduced a vaccine injury financial assistance program. So to provide support for people who suffer a serious adverse event that is assessed to be related to COVID-19 vaccines administered in Singapore.
It's good.
So
That's
that
good.
is what we have done.
That sounds very good.
Issue is different. Because the time is up. So I want to raise one point which we can come out with a consensus next time. When there is a government program, under the government program, somebody dies, the compensation is fixed. Okay. Like in India, if you die of vasectomy or non-scalpel vasectomy or tubal ligation, the compensation is only rupees 500 US dollars. In that case, then why compensation is not fixed for the private sector and question is different. Question is when it comes to government, we say our compensation will be capped. But if you do the same thing without a government program, the compensation is not capped. So my thing is that we as a CMAAO should come back, that CMAAO that the compensation should be capped in every cases of surgery. If there is a mishap, compensation should be capped.
I agree. Yeah. The government have to cap the compensation. Otherwise, it could easily bankrupt the government.
I know, but then they are bankrupting us. When it comes to me, when there is a case against me, I get bankrupted. So therefore, my compensation against any case should also be kept. This is what I'm trying to say. So I'll request Dr. Chong to sum up.
Thank you, President. And it's always enlightening to attend this Saturday's meetings. In particular, today we had a very enlightening tutorial again by President on the various vaccines and the difficulties, the areas of difficulties in these new vaccines that are coming onto the market, perhaps with regards to the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Thank you, President. And to all the participants, we always enjoy these Saturday sessions. And I hope to see you all back here again next Saturday to learn more enlightening things about COVID, vaccines, and whatever. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. We'll be back.
And thank you.
Before you finish, can I add that on the 24th, we are initiating the 2021 series of the UNESCO, the international discussion panels. And this is an important one with the WMA. It's being launched with David Barbie, the president. and it's about the international. The theme is the contemporary relevance of bioethics and the Holocaust. Reflections on the legacy of the doctor's trial at Nuremberg. So this is in keeping with the United Nations Remembrance Day on the 27th. So the 27th is going to be about education. 24th, it's about practice. How do we bring this together? So we'll invite all of you. We'll have CMAAO over there. We'll have, I think I've asked all the several presidents of the various medical associations to take part, will be taking part in a panel discussion. The WMA president and Otto is going to, our Secretary General is going to present something there, and so will be from the AMA, American Medical Association president, and so forth. So I'll give you more information, but to keep this in mind. And after that, we will have KK also in the next series on the mutation. I think that's going to coming up. So welcome to all of you, just to give you that information. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.